I've been teaching myself the basics of cooking for several years now, but there's one question that still remains. Why are there so many different kinds of onions? What's up, hungry people? Welcome to the Starving Chef's Kitchen. Today we're going to be trying something a little bit different, and we are going to be checking out the various kinds of onions that you can find in your grocery store and how you can utilize each one in several different recipes. First up, we have yellow onions. Now, yellow onions are the most common type of onions that you can find in your grocery store, and they're super pungent raw, but really sweet once they've been cooked. Yellow onions are perfect for everyday use. If a recipe calls for onions but doesn't specify what kind of onion to use, your go-to onion should be the hearty yellow. They have this really nice parchment skin that's super loud and crinkly when you take it off. It's just kind of satisfying to pull off the skin. And I'm kind of having a hard time with it here. Oh my gosh, can't get this piece off. Yellow onions can be found pretty much year-round. In fact, about 90% of onions grown in the United States are actually yellow onions. The easiest way to cut an onion without crying, shockingly, is to put it into the freezer for about an hour before you slice. This is the moment of truth. If I start crying, then I'm wrong. But seems like I'm gonna be okay. What putting the onions in the freezer does is actually makes the juices less likely to spray out into the air because they are heavier and stay inside the onion. Store yellow onions in a cool, dry place and keep them away from potatoes because they will cause the potatoes to grow eyes. To store yellow onions long term, you can wrap them in a paper towel and stick them in a mesh bag and keep them in your crisper for up to 3 months. Next up are sweet onions, also known as Vandalia onions, Walla Walla, and Maui onions. Basically anything with the word sweet in the name are sweet onions. Sweet onions are best bought spring through summer and are a little more mellow in the winter months than they are in their peak season. In a side-by-side comparison, the sweet onion is larger and flatter than the yellow onion and has a lighter, more opaque skin than the yellow onion does. Sweet onions are ideal for caramelizing and even better for making onion rings. Next up, white onions. With their all white and papery skin, white onions are much sweeter and crisper in flavor than yellow onions. With their mild and sweet flavor, white onions are actually really good for serving raw or in salsas or guac because it adds a nice tangy snap of flavor right in the middle of your taste buds. When you put them all together, the white onion should be the heaviest out of the 3. Sweet onions are kind of a cross between your white onion and your yellow onion, but have a much more sweet flavor, while the white onion has a crisper flavor. Yellow onion, on the other hand, is extremely pungent, usually isn't recommended to eat raw. Now, red onions probably have the best sounding skin out of all of the onions. Just take a listen. Bet you didn't know this was going to be an ASMR video. Red onions can be anywhere from a dark magenta to more of a violet purple in color. They have a really assertive flavor and they're best used in raw applications, but they do become a little bit more mild and sweet once they've been cooked. Red onions have a much sharper taste in the winter than they do in the summer when they have a much more mild and mellow flavor. I recommend using red onions to add splashes of color to any dish. Red onions can be bought year-round, but I definitely recommend seeking them out, especially in the winter months, so you can take advantage of that nice sharp flavor. Next up are pearl onions. They're basically exactly like a regular onion, but super tiny. Pearl onions can be glazed, roasted, pickled, or even frozen to last way longer than your regular onion. The only thing I dislike about pearl onions is that they're kind of hard to prep. The best way to get the skin off is to actually blanch them in hot water first and then pop them out of their skins, because otherwise you're going to be stuck there peeling off every single teeny tiny layer to get to that nice soft flesh. While you can buy pearl onions year round, they can be sort of hard to find, especially in the winter months. So if you need pearl onions for a specific recipe, you can usually find a frozen variety in your frozen food aisle. Next up are green onions, also known as scallions, spring onions, salad onions, and even sometimes shallots. Green onions are probably the most misunderstood onion that there is. Basically, all green onions are unformed onions, the immature onions that haven't yet formed a full bulb. Green onions are best used to add a splash of color as a garnish, or it can even be cooked into things like fried rice or added in at the last stages of any stew. Look for green onions in the late spring and summer when they are at their peak. Never store green onions in a plastic bag, because the high moisture level will cause the onions to wilt and rot a lot faster than if they are stored upright in a glass jar or vase like a flower. If they have their root, you can plant them again too. Next up are your leeks. Leeks are basically shaped like overgrown green onions. They have a mellow flavor but are actually pretty sweet. They generally aren't eaten raw because they can be super tough, and they're really hard to get really clean, which if they're not cleaned correctly, they might result in a gritty flavor and texture. Leeks are awesome roasted, but they can also be creamed to make lovely, lovely sauces. Next up, shallots. Shallots are smaller than other onions and have a brown skin with a light purple flesh. They're most likely going to be paired up in multiple lobes, which means when you open them, there's a higher chance for two to be attached together that need pulled apart. Now, my grocery store was out of regular shallots, so mine are a little bit on the small side, but I have seen shallots that can get pretty large. They're easy to finely mince because of their thin layers, and they look pretty because of their color. Shallots are closer to garlic in flavor, and so that means that they add a really pungent, bright flavor to pretty much any dish. They're great to use raw in dressings, and I've even used them in mignonette with oysters. While they are definitely great chopped up, they are also excellent roasted. They're really popular in Asian and Indian culture because they add a bright zing of flavor to any dish. Shallots can typically be bought year-round, and make sure when you buy them that they don't have any bruises and that the skin is totally intact. Last up are your Cipollini onions. Cipollini onions are super sweet, which means they're perfect for caramelizing or roasting. When compared to a regular pearl onion, you can see that Cipollini onions are super flat and wide versus round. To prep a Cipollini onion, you actually have to remove both the top and the bottom, which makes them a little bit harder to prepare than your standard onion. Cipollini onions can be found year-round, though they can be sort of hard to find in the winter months. They are sweeter and milder in the summer and tangier in the winter, though. So if you can find them, you're definitely in for a treat. Onions are pretty much a staple ingredient in my house. Pretty much all my favorite recipes have at least one onion involved, and I always double the amount of onions when I'm cooking a recipe for myself. With so many different kinds and varieties of onions, it's really hard to go wrong, but there are specific uses for each one. Once you know what kind of onions you have and how to best use them, your food will thank you for it. With so many different kinds of onions to choose from, it still can be a little overwhelming to pick out which can be used for each recipe. While yellow onions should definitely be your go-to when you're in doubt, do a little research to see what onion goes best in your favorite recipes. I hope you all enjoy, and I'll talk to you soon.